Namaste. We're ready now for, I believe, our 11th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We're in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, ready for the 21st verse. Just before that, Krishna has been explaining to Arjuna that Arjuna, was required to do his dharma, the virtuous conduct that suited his karma and samskara, as an example to other people. And we often think, well, it's my business and it's just, all me. It's my life, isn't it? But in reality, our life is part of the cosmic life. Our karma is not just our karma. The fact that it brings us into contact with, consider how many people. Well, that was their karma. So we're in their karma as they are in ours. Therefore, he says, whatever a great man does, ordinary people will imitate. In other words, it's interesting that word that Prabhupada puts. Actually, in Sanskrit, just says it will follow, but imitates a good word. Meaning, we see people do right and we say, well, I want to be like them, and so we act like them. We see they do virtuous things, we do virtuous things. We see they do charitable things, we do charitable things. They follow his example. So you see, it isn't just our life. And it isn't just our little family circle or the circle of people we consider our friends that we know. It's everyone. You may say, well, but what does it matter if they don't know you? But it does. Because everything we do is like being in a lake or a pond, and the ripples of our action go out and affect the entire surface. And if other people are in that water with us, it touches them. So we are living for the world. It isn't just people like Krishna, Rama, and Jesus that are world saviors. We too, much lesser level, a lesser level, but yet no less real level. We are this. Consider me, that's Krishna. I am not bound by any sort of duty. Well, obviously, because he was a perfectly liberated being. There are two forms of avatar. I think I may have mentioned it. There's a belief the Absolute just comes down and takes on some kind of form, is sort of made of his will. It isn't even an ordinary kind of body, and uses it and then abandons it and goes back into the Absolute. Or that an avatar is an absolutely perfected being who has evolved through all the worlds, gone up and become totally one with the Absolute, and therefore returns to the world, and therefore in his innate character, and obviously in his conduct, he is divine. And the fact is, it doesn't matter which we believe in. I personally believe in both of them. The thing is, we need to listen to what they say and do as they do. Therefore, consider me. I'm not bound by any sort of duty because he has no karma. There is nothing in all the three worlds I do not already possess. That's a wonderful thing because you see, we can come to the state of Krishna. That term Krishna consciousness has been kicked around here and abroad for the last several decades, but they don't mean it in the genuine way, but we should. It means having the identical consciousness that Krishna did, being God revealed as Krishna was. Of course, that's an ideal for us to strive for, and he was that already. There's nothing in all the three worlds which I don't already possess. Nothing I have yet to acquire. But I go on working nevertheless. Well, God does. I mean, God projects all these worlds, all of which are inhabited by sentient beings of varying levels of awakening or evolution. So God projects the world, he withdraws the world, he projects the world, he withdraws the world. And and we live in God, especially Ishwara, and Ishwara lives in us. And Ishwara lives through us in a certain sense. And Ishwara experiences everything we experience. Now, would you like to be feeling all the emotions and experiencing all the events of everybody in the world? If our mind could even take it all in, well, think of all the suffering there would be. Think of the evil there would be, the evil intentions and evil wills. Think of all the fears, all these things. Ishwara experiences them all. Therefore, it is said that, in a sense, God is the Mahayagya. He sacrifices himself by uniting his consciousness with our consciousness, and he undergoes everything we undergo. Every person who feels a pain right now, throughout not just this world, relative creation, Ishwara feels it. It's not easy to be God, is it? So, nevertheless, he said, I carry on. If I do not continue to work entiringly as I do, mankind would still follow me no matter where I led them. Because you see, he's at the core of our being, and naturally then we share the identical nature. So then we start doing it. But when the great teacher appears, the avatar appears, then true human beings intuit his advent and find him out, even if it's all subliminal in the search. And when they see, they follow. They do. Now, Anandamayi Ma was a transcendental being. So it was very convenient to go bow down in front of her, say, oh, Ma, 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 and excuse yourself from thinking of her as an example. Oh, she's God. But she did things. She did ethical things. One, she spoke the truth to people. She was incredibly charitable. She supported entire families. She followed Sanatana Dharma perfectly. I knew a mess-off layabout who pretended to be a devotee of Ma, who had read somewhere that Ma had said to a particular individual, when did I ask you to do anything? And therefore, when any right conduct came up, this supposed devotee would say, well, Ma says, when did I ever ask you to do anything? Well, how about the idea that Mother shouldn't have to ask us to do anything? Should Mother really have to say, Nirmalananda, don't shoot anybody? Nirmalananda, don't cheat anybody? Well, of course not. But Ma worshipped and worshipped and worshipped externally. It showed devotion to God in the forms of God. Then she shouldn't have to tell me to do it. I should think, I'm Ma's and Ma is mine. And the more I align myself with Ma, the more I am truly with Ma and a part of Ma, and I'll do what Ma says. Is that so hard to grasp? So pretending that we're devotees of God but don't think we have to be godlike is just pure, let's get Kentuckian, ornery cussedness on our behalf. And we're not fit and worthy people. That's the real truth. So, let's read again that verse. If I did not continue to work untiringly as I do, mankind would still follow me no matter where I led them, because I say it'd be a subliminal matter. Suppose I were to stop. Are you ready for some negative Christian talk? They would all be lost. Now, I grew up where they said there are souls that are lost. Now, of course, they all put and they all go to hell. But we had songs about being lost, the realms of the lost, and so on. And the idea that the Good Shepherd comes to seek for the lost. So human beings can be lost. Later, he'll say they lose all good sense and intelligence and they just wander around without a mind. So, if God was not working on us, I love the way dear Brahmachari Paramachartan, whom we also call Brother Philip, how he said it with such joy about how we come forth and how we live in this relative existence, each one. And he would say, he always smiled and said, but God meditates on them. And so they evolve. They can't help it. It's a wonderful idea. Inevitable. Divinity as our inevitable attainment and status. So we won't be lost. Most people are now. It's sad. But until they decide they don't like being lost, you and I can't do anything for them. All right. The result would be confusion and destruction, which is true. We'd have no law of spirit. We wouldn't have any kind of true religion. We would just have superstition and muddle around and just live very minimally like human beings, die like animals. You see, it's an interesting thing. It says in the Bible, I say, God is speaking, I say, you are gods. But you die like men and you're put in a grave like animals. Yeah, my goodness. Teachings of Hinduism and Christianity. The ignorant work for the fruit of their action. In other words, the short-term thing. There's nothing with saying, well, I'm working hard. I want them to pay me because I have to eat, I have to live, maybe I have a family to support. But that should be in the context of Dharma, the way of life which liberates us from all rebirth and all limitations of awareness. The wise must work also, without desire, pointing man's feet to the path of his duty. In other words, we do need to be an example. And we will be, because we have an interchange with people. All right, let's again go back to that one. The ignorant work for the fruit of their action, the wise must work also without desire, pointing man's feet to the path of his duty. Of course, we better realize we're not absolute God here, so we're doing it for our own welfare as well. Let the wise beware, lest they bewilder the minds of the ignorant, hungry for action. Let them show by example, because see, we all are compelled to, no matter how lazy we are, when we wake up in the morning, at some time we get up. We realize I got to get up and move. Let them show by example how work is holy when the heart of the worker is fixed on the highest. Because if our consciousness is on the highest, it's the highest that is also living and working through us. It says in the Bible, we're workers together with God. That's what it means. Christians don't know what it means, but as students of the Gita, we can know what it means. Also, I gave an example. It's rather awful, but I'll say it again. There was a woman who saw a man who fell over and was dying on a bridge. This was in India. She was an American missionary. And so he was a large man. And so she went over and she was trying to pull him out of the way because traffic was coming, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. If you know anything about traffic in the Orient, yes, it's untamed. And so she was trying to drag him out of the path of traffic so he wouldn't be run over and killed. And there were two sadhus just sitting on the edge of the bridge. And she said, please come help me drag this man out of the way of harm. And one of them said, oh, we're sadhus. We don't do anything like that. That is an evil thing that is very strong in India. In fact, I'm sorry to tell you that when Swami Vivekananda and his fellow disciples started Ramakrishna Mission and declared as a purpose the establishment of hospitals and free dispensaries to help alleviate the sufferings of people. And especially, those sadhus go, they work in a ward in a hospital, they give baths to the patients, and yes, they carry a bedpan for those bedridden patients. And instead of being honored, instead of being respected for kindness and mercy, compassion, most of the people look at them and they say, they're bedpan swamis. You imagine that? That is really also an ornery cusses mentality. Someone who gives their life and sacrifices their comfort to undergo very unpleasant things for the alleviation of suffering are spoken of with contempt. And that is by utterly contemptible people. Let's make sure we don't join in their number. But you see, those are sadhus in Ramakrishna Mission, and they do japa and they do meditation, and therefore their work is holy, even if it is pulling weeds out of the garden. The world is holy, isn't it? What part of it is not holy? All right. Every action is really performed by the gunas. We'll get into that later, and this isn't too good an expression because the gunas are not things, and the gunas are not forces. The gunas are patterns and modes of energy behavior. And that's very, very important. So you can say the Shakti of the gunas, the action of the gunas, but we can't act like they're just a separate entity that are somehow conscious and they do things. So it's a very difficult thing to say, actually. But it's true ultimately. Man, deluded by his egoism, thinks, I am the doer. Because you see, the power of the gunas are used by us and according to our will and our desire to accomplish then what we wish. So that's the way in which you can say the gunas do it, but the gunas do it by our direction. So we don't get to say, oh, the guna did it, I didn't do it. The guna slapped you, that was a Rajo guna. You can't do that. Not like this pathetic friend of mine who came to a very bad end, who used to say, I don't sin, my body sins. What could be a more foul idea, a more devilish idea than that, and a denial of utter moral responsibility? So we see then that we have to be responsible. and understand it in the right perspective. Since the little noise went off, it says this is the end of this. So, in the interest of order and compassion for you, namaste, namaste, thank you. Thank you for your attention.